Okay, so we have to talk about it. She doesn't look comfortable in her shoes. She is Marley, my student. And 3 years ago, we started working on her placement. And more recently, the Sugar Plum Fairy. She had some really good questions, and I thought, why not share it publicly in a series that we call Amateur to Ballerina. Now, back to her pointe shoes.
On Monday and Tuesday, we spent the whole time working on my pointe shoes and darning them, Frankenstein stitching them, and now we're playing with some glue on there too. And I just wonder if doing all of this stuff to the shoe is just kind of masking the fact that maybe my technique isn't all the way there with pointe, or is this necessary for my shoes? And I just have really challenging feet that need a lot of help in my shoes.
Okay, so great question. Let's think about pointe shoes in general. Just good old fashioned stock pointe shoe. You're asking basically a person, a human, to go up onto the toe or toes, generally their largest toes, and move with grace and precision, right? That's awesome. But imagine the engineering that you have to have in order to do this. Think about more sports shoes, like a shoe for basketball, a shoe for soccer, a shoe for football, or shoe for running. There's a lot of engineering involved. There's a ton of engineering. And due to the size of the players and, you know, their special requests, they have like shoes that they like need certain things developed for them. It's the same thing with dancers. You need certain things engineered in order for you to do your best. If you want to call it cheating, well, then you should probably take away the shoes of any great athlete ever, or the swimsuit of a great swimmer. Or there's always a tool that you use, and you getting specific about that tool to fit your body, there's nothing wrong with that. There's no such thing as a cheater shoe. If there's a shoe that can make you dance magically, point me to it. That would be awesome. But there just isn't a such thing or tool. There's just going to be things that make it process a lot easier. As you could see, once we darned the shoes and, you know, added glue to the shoes and, you know, did some seaming of the shoes, did it make you dance better, or did you just feel more comfortable in the shoe to push forward on your technique?
The latter. It felt like for the first time I could actually work my right foot in the shoe.
Right. So there's, if you're asking if we're cheating your placement, or you're concerned about you lacking placement, it's actually quite the opposite. I'm concerned that your placement, your technique will get weaker if you don't have shoes that are engineered for your body. And that's what we're working towards. So as you get stronger and as you develop more technique, you're going to get more precise with your shoes. And it's just going to be a little bit easier for you to move within them and use placement and turnout.
That's a good segue into my next question, actually, because we talked a lot about the importance of the ribs this week, on pointe especially. And if I really just keep my focus on hips and ribs, then everything kind of else falls into place. So I was wondering if you could talk about the ribs a little bit.
So the ribs in general, when it comes to placement, are kind of like the hips of the upper body, if you want to think of it that way. If they're out of place, things feel heavy and very tough. But with most people, they have to do what feels like tucking in order to get a neutralized hip. You have to do what feels like hunching to get a neutralized rib. So there's a lot of weirdness in the feeling. In fact, I ask some of my students to hunch like a grandma in order to align their spine, and to get the correct rib placement that allows them to move fluidly. Placement is really just like it's something you have to really correct with ribs and hips. Now, you can't start with the ribs. You have to have the hips aligned. You got to have some basic turnout going before you can even get to the ribs, because you have to have a certain base level of turnout and placement. But once you get to a certain level of strength, you do have to start using the ribs in order to get further, progress.
Yeah, I remember the feeling and what we were working on. We were working on the final turn sequence in the manege, and I was worried when I was keeping the right rib in, and I felt that hunching feeling, and I have trouble with the right leg not being light, and it felt like, oh, I feel almost heavier because I'm hunching. And then when we did the turn sequence, I was like, how does my leg feel lighter?
Yeah, simple. If you're not dropping your weight onto your right leg, that's why your right leg would normally feel heavier, is because you have that right rib that protrudes both to the side and to the front. So because of that, you have weight dumping onto your lower body on your right side. So when you correct that, leg feels light, just like we want, light and tight. Your body is a machine. I'm going to keep saying that word. It's a machine that we are building to be engineered and worked a certain way. And I think the sooner that we start to see ourselves that way as dancers, the sooner we can start to get to the fun stuff like artistry. Because without the machine, you can't really do the artistry part. As you could be the best dance artist in the world, but without technique, nobody will really appreciate it. So, yeah.